Let me ask you another question about inflation, which is the administration and the president himself has talked a lot about what he sees as corporate greed, that the price of things has gone up almost artificially and the companies are taking advantage of customers. I asked you this question about 2 years ago, and at the time you said, no, I think it's actually more about supply and demand that's leading to this. Do you have a change in perspective?
Well, I'm going to say exactly the same thing. I think that inflation is about supply and demand. And clearly a significant part of the inflation we had the burst after the pandemic, during the pandemic, reflected supply constraints and stresses on supply chains. And also Russia's invasion of Ukraine led to a leap in energy prices and impacted food prices globally. That said, there are many sectors of the economy where competition is limited and price-cost margins are high. And it is, you could call that corporate greed. There are high markups. The level of markups is high.
Your boss calls it corporate greed. You don't.
Well, you know, there's a lack of competition that enables firms to have healthy markups and profits. And our antitrust policy, which has been very active during this administration, is designed to make sure that we have effective competition in markets to hold down prices and offset that.
When you see polls by Americans who say that we are either in a recession today or that the economy is terrible or bad, what do you think about that?
Well, I also notice that when they're asked about their own personal situation, overwhelmingly people say they're fine. And when they're asked about the local economy, they also say that that's fine. But when they're asked about the national economy, they think things are not good. And that really is something I don't think we've ever seen in the United States before. We also see record levels of new business formation, which is something you would not see unless people felt confident about the economy.
But isn't that misinformation? I mean, some of the polls, by the way, would suggest, I mean, you've seen some political polls that say they believe, that the public believes that the former President Trump, was better for the economy than the current president.
Well, you know, I think President Biden understands that people are feeling pain. And when they say this, they are concerned. I think they've seen the level of prices rise quite a lot. I mean, over 20% over the last 3 years or so. They can remember when the price of a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread was 30% lower than it is now. And low-income families have seen some of the highest increase in costs. That said, wages have also gone up. And the calculations the Congressional Budget Office has done show that all Americans, both those who are well off and those who are near the bottom of the income distribution, are better off now. Their wages have risen more than prices. But I think people are influenced by that. And then if you go back really over the last decade, you see things that are critically important to Americans: the cost of education, the cost of housing in many big cities, the cost of childcare have gone up a lot, and life seems unaffordable. So I think high costs have been a problem in critical things that are necessities, have been a problem for people. Healthcare costs. So it is the president's top priority, even if the rate of inflation has come down, as I believe it has and will continue to address the high cost of living, whether it's in allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He's done capping the cost of insulin co-pays, doing what he can to bring down the cost of living.